Welcome to the World Heavyweight Division. For the next hour and a half, we are going through two professional main event shows where we are ending the month of July with a bang. I was already thinking about setting this up for maybe a day ago, and even though it is 11:30 p.m. as we speak, we are coming to the end of the 27th of July, so I am going to try to take this on a deadline as we speak. That doesn't mean that we have some time to review these last episodes. Today, we are going to talk about the entirety of the last two heavyweight title fights or contest non-title bouts where we believe these heavyweight fighters have what it takes to still be in the heavyweight division. But it just goes to show you that sometimes when you're the greatest, your prime might get the better of you. And that's what we witnessed during the last week of this month, because the month of July has been an exciting moment. Like 2 years ago in July has been controversial for me, from a Clarissa Shields being champion to other belt champion and holders and other problematics backstage that I was upset by. And then a year later, in July of last year, we had great moments, from Trineka Johnson being champ, Usyk coming back champ, Clarissa Shields retaining her belts, and there was a lot of moments. This month might not be my favorite, but I've put in a lot of work for July. It seems like the month of July, I do a lot, but I still throw in everything I can to handle the situation. So before we talk about the first show, technically, I'm going to talk about the Tyson Fury versus Mariusz Wach fight, because there's not a lot of stuff of notes I wrote down, and it's hard because there's no fight footage or like DAZN. There's no DAZN, no Amazon, no Netflix, so it's hard for me to understand. So with that being said, let's just break it down, because I am going to try to take it a little bit easy here, but I don't want to talk incoherent here. But again, I do find a lot of hard stuff to understand, and considering after I restart my phone in just a moment here, which I'm doing right now, just to find information on my phone, we actually had a little bit of a crazy update going on. Yesterday on the 26th, someone in Nevada recorded a 2.5-hour live stream video of something happening in Area 51, where it stated for over 2.5 hours, a live stream video shows smoke coming from the horizon of where Area 51 is. And Area 51 has a bunch of acres of land. So whatever was caught on fire, and this wasn't the first time that's ever happened, which is crazy. So I've been following up. I'm just going to assume that nothing terrible happened other than a mechanical burnout, something. Maybe Bigfoot was operating something, like maybe one of the human beings made a human mistake and Bigfoot tried to dose it out with something. Like, it's possible that Bigfoot was working in Area 51 and he made it worse, and that's what caused something on fire. I'm just having a theory here. It's okay. So it's just a theory, But yeah, there's a lot of hilariousness coming to it, where it meets the eye. But again, it's just my stupidity getting the better of me. Like, I wish I could start thinking more of ridiculousness, but that's all I can say. It's funny. Oh, Bigfoot. It's possible. It is possible. Anyway, I'm back with some update here on boxing, as we're trying to get some update news on what has been going on in the world of boxing. So Errol Spence Jr., so about 11 hours ago at 2:17 p.m., Errol Spence Jr., who lost against Tim Tsuzu yesterday ago. He had to fight alone. Like, Jermell Hitman Charlo could not make it to Australia for his fight because of visa problems, and he failed due to visa. He just couldn't. It was just hard to go to another country to fight. So, yeah, it really stinks. And Stephen Fulton, his fight was canceled because he missed weight. So Earl Spence had to do everything by himself. And unfortunately, he would lose by decision against Tim Tsuzu. The 12-round fight was answered his internal question as a 36-year-old former two-division champion with a 3-year layoff in his career, believes that he wants to retire. And with all the judging going on, it is tough. It is. But again, I will have to say this, that it just goes to show you that not everyone would be the greatest. But I can't say that there is moments in time where you might think to yourself, maybe they deserve it. But in my perspectiveness, I just want to think to myself that these people have had opportunities before in their career. So I really can't say for certain if any of this could be legit. But again, it's just a theory. Because we don't know if Earl Spence will retire or not. But again, what we see here is a lot of problematics. Because considering Tsuzu isn't that much of a boxer in his career, like he's had 31 pro fights. He fought since 2016, and even though he's 31 years old, known as the Phoenix, his professional defeats, as said before, have been tough. And for Earl Spence Jr., the southpaw fighter, born in Long Island, New York, living in Texas, he had to suffer a car crash one time, even when he had to take on another Garcia in 2020, and then come back a full year and a half to take on Yordenis Ugas for the WBA welterweight belt. And the last belt he had to fight for was a year later to take the WBO belt away from Terrence Crawford. And Crawford proved all the haters he was better. But again, it is what it is. But still, since his fights for 14 years right now, I can understand that. As for Tim Tsuzu, his boxing resume, even from 2016, couldn't be that terrible for his first fights in his career. He did have an interesting fight against Wade Ryan for his WBC Asia Continental belt in 2017, which was his first tough opponent. He got knocked down in round 1, but managed to survive the 10 rounds by barely winning by most of the scorecards. And he had to take on 8-0 fighter the next months later in that fight, retained titles for his Asia belt. But his competition wasn't there. He was taking on a bunch of fights that weren't legit competition. But some of them, like Joe Camilleri, Dwight Ritchie, Jack Brubaker, which are fighters in 2019 he fought against, like, their records might not be that terrible in paper. But again, even though the belts he was winning were legit, but it's hard to understand if he was that good. And his fights against Jeff Horn and Bolrin Morgan, Dennis Hogan, or even Takashi Inoue, I wouldn't really say that these fights are all terrible. When he defeated Tony Harrison in 2023 to win the vacant WBO super welterweight belt, it wasn't that terrible, even when he retained it a few months later. And then he was promoted to the legit WBO belt and defeated Brian Mendoza. Again, the fights weren't that much of a resume, but when he took on Sebastian Fundora, who at the time already lost his first pro fight against Brian Mendoza, yeah, because Brian defeated Brian Mendoza defeated Sebastian in April in Health Sports Park in Carson, California in April. And then 6 months later, he fought against Tim Tsuzu in October, and Tim Tsuzu did better than Mendoza did to Fedora. So seeing it be a legit opposite where you have Brian Mendoza right here defeating Sebastian, but right here he couldn't defeat Tim. And you have Tim in this side, he could defeat Mendoza, but he couldn't defeat Fedora. But Fedora is up here, he can't beat him, but he can beat Tim. So that right there is a triangle of how shocking it was. And the fight was a close split decision. It was a close fight. It does stink that the next fight months later by Tim, he took on Bakram Murtazelia and he suffered a third round TKO. He was getting knocked down 3 times in the second round. He was losing out points. And after that, referee Chris Young, during the third round when he was knocked down again, he just damned the fight because it just shocked me that killed Tim's career. He still won a fight in 2025 against someone, but his rematch against Sebastian Fundora in July, in the same night of the Grand Am, same night where Mario Barrios scored a majority draw against Manny Pacquiao, that right there suffered as a result for him. So it was bad. And he was knocked down in the first round, so that sealed the deal. So Tim Tsuzu seemed like it was over him. It was over with. He still took on an undefeated fighter named Anthony Vasquez in December, won the fight cleanly, and then dominated another 10-round fight against Dennis Nurja, who was a 20-0 fighter last April, another dominant win. But again, him taking on Errol Spence was like an easy thing because Errol hasn't been in the ring for a while, so it made sense for him to win this fight. But his defeats against Sebastian Fundora and Bakram Murtazelia, it's hard for me to say that he's still in the top rankings of the sport. And yes, don't get me wrong, even after Bakram Murtazelia defeated Tim, Bakram took on Josh Kelly and he lost a majority decision even after he got knocked down in round 4, even though he knocked him back in the 9th round and lost by majority decision. But again, boxers can have close fights and sometimes you might get robbed. But Tim Tsuzu, his defeats were legit. There's just nothing much you can say. But at the end of the day, I really can't say that all's well that ends well. I just don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. It's just really tough for me to say that Tim Tsuzu deserves an opportunity, but he is a champion at once, so I gotta respect that because I might not be a boxer or any other person, but I never achieved success in a major situation like that. And even though Tim might not be the best or my favorite, he still became champion if he earned it. Just like Trevor Bryan when he was with Don King Promotion. Yes, he was a WBA regular champion in 2021 if you think it was legit, the way how he won the belt and retained it, but still champion nonetheless. I gotta say it. He got lucky. Just not lucky enough to stay undefeated, but he did what he had to do. Okay, so before we talk about Tyson Fury and Mariusz, which give me just a few minutes, we do have to talk about the minimum weight division. Okay, so Oscar Collazo, trying to look up information here on Box Live to see if we can find any new information here. But before we get to that, so Moses Atama taking on Phil Pergovich. That fight is still going on for August the 29th, but again, that will rank for someone for the WBO because Atama is number 1 and Hrgovic is number 2 in the WBO. And even though Hrgovic is number 7 in the WBA, 4 in WBC, and in IBF, while Atama is number 1 in WBA, both number 3 in IBF and WBC. So that right there can seal the deal, even though they're both 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 from those 3 rankings. The WBA doesn't mean nothing, but still putting out those classes together, like But I do believe that's an interesting opportunity. He could be mandatory for the WBO belt if he fights Hrgovic, because Hrgovic is number 2 and Natama is number 1. And the WBA, well, if Hrgovic wins, that might luck his idea, depending how he wins the fight. Atama, he can get lucked on. And same with the WBC or the WIBF. Like, he could get lucky ranking a little bit better. He might rank 1 over for Lawrence O'Colly by being number 2 in the WBC. And he might be rated from number 3 to number 2 in the IBF and get that shot with Frank Sanchez. And we might get that for a vacant title. It's opportunity like that could happen. Again, because remember this. Because just betwixt you and me, Frank Sanchez from Cuba, not one single Cuban has ever become heavyweight champion. But when it comes to Moses Atama, because his father is Nigerian, his mother is Slovakian, and Moses was born in Slovakia. So not only, even though he's living in the UK as a southpaw 21-year-old fighter named Enrico Itama, he can actually become the first heavyweight boxer born in Slovakia to become heavyweight champion. And even though there is story and information that the reason they left Slovakia is because the parents stated that their children were being harassed by Slovakian people at the time, or when they were kids, and that's why they left the country. So maybe they might not be respectful for that anymore, because Atama might not. But who knows? Maybe the country of Slovakia might pay respect to Atama and apologize if he becomes champion, and maybe show respect for them, that their countrymen did the unthinkable. Yes, he is half Nigerian, half Slovakian, even though he's living in Britain, and I do have enough. I had enough with British boxers taking over the heavyweight. But for Moses, born in Slovakia, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. If Frank Sanchez and Atama fight, and if one of them win, one of their countries could become the first in their country to become heavyweight. So on paper, that right there can bring out amazement for what it is. But again, we're just going to have to wait. My final update before we get to the heavyweight fight. So here's some information. There's been a lot of interesting fights going on from here or there. The minimum weight division of boxing has been surprising. Like, Chinese boxer Yang Xingzhu fought his last pro fight against an undefeated 12-0-2 fighter from the Philippines. Won the fight in a perfect 12-round decision. And again, he is number 3 in BoxRec, and even had his moments in the sunshine. But again, I don't think people are going to talk about him, which it is what it is. But he might get lucky, because he is number 1 in the IBF, and right there. And here's the thing. Oscar Collazo and Pedro Tadran, if any one of those two, if both of those two can actually come up with a fight plan and they can fight, while Melvin Jerusalem and his South African fighter, which his name is Hughes, his last name Hughes, I'll call him Hughes, they do still believe that they might want to see the fight, because Pedro Tandren wants to fight Oscar. And I'm sure Melvin wants to win back his belt, but if he doesn't defeat the South African in a trilogy fight, then the young South African might get a lucky payday and fight for all undisputed. So we can see this going both ways, of understanding that we can still get an undisputed title. I think Oscar should keep the belts for as long as he can if they get their fight done by this year, and then maybe, or if Hughes and Melvin, Jerusalem, if both of those two are trying to fight for a trilogy, one of them get injured, which it might be Jerusalem, then Hughes might take the fight with Collazo. And if Collazo takes the agreement, he might get the undisputed fight maybe by the beginning of 2027. Like, I just think that people aren't paying attention to the lower weight class because we might witness history here, but I think there's just not a lot of money being made. But I do believe there might be an opportunity here to witness what these lower weight class dudes can do in boxing. Like, Senicia Estrada was in the minimum weight division for a long time until she retired in 2024 as undisputed and undefeated. And you can prove that small female boxers can still make an entertainment in the business. So again, like, I do see some interesting moments here because there's opportunities here for any of these boxers to get an opportunity. Like, we have some undefeated Mexicans here, like Aaron De La Cruz, Russell Silveria, undefeated Japanese boxer Ryusei Matsumoto, WBA regular champion. Some wonderful boxers, and I do have opportunities that these guys might make the train. It's opportunity. We're just gonna have to wait until that time comes. And even though Tadrin is number 1 in the Ring magazine, and Hughes is ranked number 2, he's number 2, and Tadrin is number 1. Like, if Tadrin and Hughes actually fight instead, and Collazo might have to wait, then he would have to get himself ready or start training for some other fight. And if that doesn't happen, like, it would be interesting if Tadrin or Hughes should fight each other for the WBC and IBF belt. One of them win, which I hope it's Tadrin. And then maybe fight for Collazo. Like, there's opportunities here that could happen, but the documents, the paper, who knows? But anyway, I'm done talking about that. Let's talk about the boxing heavyweight division. Let's talk about it. The Tyson Fury versus Mariusz Wach pay-per-view. Try to get ourselves together here because this one is a doozy. So, with all this being said, I've seen a lot of interesting things come around the background here, and I could obviously say that there's more to it than meets the eye. So, unfortunately, I could not find a good amount of fight footage other than just a person in the audience filming, and there's a bunch of people filming at this stadium at the time, so it wasn't much to talk about. Topology voted out 98% of fans believe Tyson Fury would win. 81.5% of them believed there was a knockout, while 2% of people, which has 50% for both decision and knockout for Wach to score out an undefeated or an upset win. But before we get to that fight, it is possible to try to understand what we got ourselves into, because by Gold Star Promotions being involved in this instead of Frank Warren, that's pretty surprising. That surprised me. But before we get to that, this part's going to be different. So Arlo Stevens versus Arash Mardani. This was mostly a heavyweight fight for 4 rounds. And unfortunately, when you look at it from my perspective, it wasn't like nothing could go wrong here, because with all due respects, there was nothing much for me to try to find footage of this fight, other than there are videos about a couple years ago about Arlo's pro debut. He did fought a couple times, like some years ago. He's been out of the ring for a while. He comes back, makes a comeback. Unfortunately, when trying to find information on his next fight, it was hard because the only fight footage I could find on YouTube were fights in 2024, which was only 2 fights. So it kind of upsets me that there is nothing much of fight footage online. The source's information, even on topology.com, states that during the second round, unknown for what the time was, his opponent, Arash, comes to the second round in the fourth round. He injured his shoulder, depending on which one it was, only for the referee to stop the fight, giving a second round win for Arlo from the UK to win a fight and finally get back an opportunity there. All in all, it's unknown for how long the match was for the time, but again, good win for his opponent. Arlo defeats the undefeated 2-0 Arash Mardani. Again, both of them were 2-0 undefeated, even though Mardani was a 41-year-old Iran fighter from Iran. And Arlo, he hasn't fought since June of 2024, and his first 2 fights weren't that much to talk about, but at least this fight did give him something to talk about. He's ranked 328, so it was a good win. Next fight, Michael Allen Flannery versus Narong Pomeraskon. Unfortunately, again, this fight, I couldn't find footage of this fight. Information-wise, Michael Allen, 14-1, scores a third-round KO against a 12-6-1 Thailand fighter. And unfortunately, 3 Thailand people came into this show, and they all got defeated by utter knockout. And all of them were by KO, which is ridiculous. The next fight would be Lucas Dacios, an Australian boxer, 2-0, all by knockout, takes on 2-0 Ratapal Kadam Duan, who is also a 2-0 fighter, 2-0, and Lucas, 1-0. The fight ended, as in Topology stated that the fight ended at 1 minute and 56 seconds of the first round by KO. It was a legit good victory for him at the time. But all in all, at this moment, with these 3 fights ending by knockout, it was hard for me to find fight footages of these fights because I was really curious to see if there's any fight footage of these fights. I guess I can't find them, even though it really does upset me that these fights are not popping up. I wish I can say for certain. But again, it's not like there's fights, there's interviews by some of the people, but again, it really does upset me that the country of Thailand did not have any single serenity for putting this on TV. So it really does upset me because these fights were ending by knockout, and these next 2 fights, the third last fight and the second last fight, ended by utter first round knockout. Good win for Lucas. He's ranked number 923, winning his second pro fight. German fighter, 15-1-1, Daniel Baer, Baer, versus 6-0 Simon Ibekwe, which I think he's from the country of, he was born in Great Britain, but again, he comes in the heavyweight. The British boxer Simon comes in, scores a first-round KO, and defeats the German. And what's actually funny is that even though after that first-round knockout, which was the second last fight, which says on Topology, the third last fight, which was Mark Anhonjo, a 1-0-1 fighter, takes on a 11-5-1 fighter named Aruiwan, another Thai fighter, and he gets suffered a first round KO defeat as well, and Mark wins the fight easily. Another heavyweight fight. Simon win this fight. He's ranked number 111 in the heavyweight. Good job to get him there. Mark Ahonza is 351. So the British fighters got some great moments here. Like we have the last three fights ended in first round. One ended in the third round, and the other was a second round knockout. So yeah, 5 out of the 6 fights ended by knockout. So it makes you wonder if these fights were on YouTube or maybe on TV, this would have been a great entertainment for crowd people to talk about. And it upsets me that Spencer Brown from Gold Star Promotion, or even another promoter named Supanat Chanram from Thai, could not get nothing done for putting in any television for this. Like, this is a former heavyweight champion takes on a past prime journeyman fighter. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. So this might take me like 5 or 10 minutes past the 40-minute mark. So I might take a break and start refilling my cup and clear my throat out. So I'm going to take a break right now after I'm done talking about this fight, and then take 20 minutes off, and then I'll talk about the next heavyweight contest in a matter of an hour, because I think it's better to take a break after this, because I'm just upset about this. There's nothing entertaining for me to talk about. And you're probably wondering, why do I love talking about this stuff? Because the controversy of boxing is what I love talking about. I love talking about, why is Peter Kadiru, an unknown person that's not even ranked in the top 15 in WBA, is getting a heavyweight title shot against Mirat Gassiev a few weeks ago? Why would the WBA organizers do that? Why would we have an investigator come in and investigate this and understand? Am I the only one talking about this? That's the stuff I love doing. And I want to bring that stuff out to the public. And that's the beauty of I talk about it. There's reasons why NASCAR might not be big enough, and sometimes we like to berate it, but push that envelope as best we could. And that's the beauty of it. Again, I just think to myself, there's so much problematics here. But enough talk. The 12-round heavyweight contest. One-time, two-time, I say one-time heavyweight champion. I'll tell you why. Everyone says he's a two-time. I say he's a one-time. We'll talk about some other time. Takes on a one-time title fighter. Tyson Fury versus Mariusz Wach. This fight surprises me. So I did saw fight footage on YouTube and fights that were there that night. And if I had to talk about this fight all day, I would have to clear my throat, because for some reason, it's just getting worse by the minute. But here's the thing. This entire fight is so ridiculous. And I didn't write no notes down because it was hard for me to understand. This fight was crazy. Tyson Fury at 264 takes on a guy that's the heaviest of his career. So the heaviest fighter Tyson Fury ever fought in his career, guys that were around 260 or 270, like the first fighter he took on that was a strong dude was 261-pound Derek Chisora in 2011. And then years later, he did have a rematch with him in 2014, but Chisora was 241. Took him more years later. He took on Francis Pianeta, 254 in 2018. And then years later, until we had a rematch trilogy with Chisora at 260 3/4 in 2022. Francis Ngannou weighed 272. And then Arslanbek Makhmedov was 265 a few months ago. Mariusz Wach weighed in at 291 pounds. And when you watch this fight, Mariusz is 6'7". Tyson Fury is 6'9". And watching the weight differential and how both guys are standing next to each other, taking the punch, Mariusz is a big dude. I want to be I try to be respectful here. Mariusz Wach looks like a Polish Colonel Sanders with barely some hair, white hair, mustache, shave, barely. Colonel Sanders, who just came out of a Burger King restaurant and came here to fight. That's what Mariusz Wach looked like. Mariusz Wach, if his back was turned to the hard camera by the people in the audience filming and Tyson Fury's facial expression throwing punches, he does have that Colonel Sanders look. He has the white hair, shaved, but you can see some hair to him. But he is big. He's so big. His body is so big, and his height differential, he seemed a lot bigger than Fury. And there were times when I looked at Tyson Fury's body proportion, like he has a big belly as well, but 264 still. But Tyson Fury's body, he got outweighed in this fight over 30 pounds by Mariusz. And Mariusz, he was a big dude. This fight was so ridiculous. They were through jabs, there were clinches, and there are times that Fury was taking his time, watching out for himself. Again, he was like under a decade younger than Mariusz. Mariusz was 46, and Fury's already in his mid to almost late 30s. So, but man, Tyson Fury is in the same age where Muhammad Ali was when he took on Larry Holmes, and Muhammad Ali didn't do nothing in that fight for Holmes, which has to do something with the Don King situation because of that, but nothing like that. But Tyson Fury managed to do his movements, like trick his fighter, throw out a two-punch combination. There was a moment in the fight where he pushed Mariusz to the ropes at one point in one of the rounds, and I don't know what rounds they were, forgot, but he gets pushed out to the ropes, to the blue ropes. Like one side on the camera shows the red ropes, one has the blue ropes, the background has the black ropes, and the ropes closest to the cameraman are the white ropes. So Fury pushes out him to the blue ropes, and then Mariusz backs up to the white ropes, and for some hilarious reason, reports stated that Tyson Fury kissed Wach. Seriously, he kissed Wach. But the problem is, the cameraman couldn't show it because it was showing the backside of Mariusz's back, but you can see Tyson Fury's reaction of him kissing his opponent. If Fury really tried to make something ridiculous, this fight, you could tell that he was still trying to be the exciting fighter. It's so unbelievable. And after watching the 6th round and understanding, Colonel Sanders just could not handle the fight for it. He was having problems. The clinches were getting a little bit worse. But again, they were doing the best they could. But by the 7th round, I think the crowd were starting to get boring, even after watching a bunch of fights end by knockout. The end of the fight comes in where he's putting out a head, like locking off Mariusz's arm from punching, and the clinching. The clinches were getting worse. Mariusz's facial expression, he just didn't want it anymore. None of their faces were bruised, but Mariusz was out of his prime, and they rung the bell for round 7, but his crew told the referee, the referee's name is Daniel Alberto Duarte. Don't know him, but we know him now. He walks up to Mariusz's team. They tell him to stop the fight after the end of round 7. He did not answer the bell to round 8. And after 6 pro fights, all by knockout, Fury wins the fight. And that right there is it. The last thing I'm going to say about this before I end the episode here is that I just find this ridiculous. That's it. No TV footage of these fights. I just can't believe that there's no TV footages of these fights, and that just upsets me a lot. None of the other fights were on YouTube. Maybe they are. It might take a while, but man, I'm upset about that because I really wanted to review the entire show, just like the Joshua and Penga fight, I will get to that one next time, which might take about 30 minutes. So I'm going to take a 30-minute break. I'll come right back, ladies and gentlemen, fill up my cup. Congrats for Fury still being in the top 10. We will be right back.